Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Talking Point on this overcast Friday morning. Sean Michael Small here on WESN, your content capital. WESN, check us out at WESNCC, where you could find all of our local content online, just for you to watch. If you missed this live broadcast, you could check it out there. But folks, my co-host is not able to join me today. However, I am expecting to be joined by the good lady herself, Karen Shashera, at around 8:20. But until then, we have quite a few things to get through, some interesting happenings in TNT. So let's kick things off with the daily review. And to start things off, I say interesting, and that actually is inaccurate. The first story I want to touch on is a bit of a tragedy, and that is, of course, if you've seen the morning newspaper, and a lot of people might actually have been able to see the physical signs, and that is Dan Steels Limited facility in La Romaine caught fire yesterday morning, and apparently it burned through the morning into the day. Firefighters, for all intents and purposes, were not able to control the spread of the fire, and it seems as though it has affected most of the pretty sizable buildings, so much so that the ownership is quite concerned. They have already said publicly the damage seems to be greater than they expected. And one of the family members that owns the company is concerned about the employees who might have a difficult time finding reemployment, given the fact that this entire facility might no longer be functional. Fortunately, all 60 employees, I believe, were accounted for. There were no injuries. The cause of the fire is not necessarily yet determined. It is thought that ongoing work to the building itself with welding might have caused a section of the roof to catch on fire, and then the fire spread in part due to having combustible materials stored in the facility, as well as having, I believe, propane tanks in the facility might have also gone off. One thing to note, now, there were tenders from the TTPS Fire Service. There were also tenders from a private contractor, as well as appliances were on standby from Heritage. So, to some extent, those resources were or should have been, in theory, sufficient. But I believe one of the officers, or Chief Fire Officer, Anna Bristow, he did point out to the fact that a lack of breathing apparatus could have affected how the firefighters were able to execute their duties, because they were trying to contain the fire, and for all intents and purposes, they lost contain. And his argument is, with proper breathing apparatus, the firefighters could have taken their hoses directly to the heart of the blaze within the building, as opposed to being limited, I assume, outside, or not being able to directly hit the main body of the fire. Because the smoke, it's an enclosed building. As much as the roof is on fire, it's going to be difficult to approach. So that caused a reduction in the effectiveness of their ability to try to out it, and we saw what happened. So it's interesting to see what will come out of this, because this is a pretty sizable medium business. And again, there is question with regards to just about 60 employees. It might not seem like a big number to the national sphere, but something like that in a small nation as ours, we can't underestimate it. Of course, there's also the fact that we lost the productivity of an entire business entity, right? Not just an employer. And those whose capital was invested in the business, all of that is lost. But now the question is this a one-off? Or is this a warning of what could potentially happen? Now, with the excessive heat, usually in TNT, we don't have the dry heat that you have in the States, but with the excessive heat that we've been experiencing, would we be more vulnerable to fire as that heat potentially dries out our physical environment on land quite a bit more? And of course, it might seem like an obvious question to ask. And then, of course, it's the ongoing question with the equipment that our fire service has available to it. And I do wonder if, again, we are basically set up our systems with certain expectations. And we are kind of, in some ways at least, potentially doing the minimum. And now if environmental factors, outside factors have changed, that minimum might have gone up. There's another aspect to this that is also somewhat scary to me. And that is if environmentally, TNT might be more vulnerable to fires. So now we have to be more careful about throwing cigarettes on the ground and where people are welding and how people are cooking, etc., etc. We might be more vulnerable to fires as long as this heat continues. Okay. There are parts of Trinidad with poor road access. There are parts of Trinidad with poor water access, which I'll get into in a little while. And then there are parts of Trinidad where you have roads. You have roads into Port of Spain, for example, but at certain times of the day, getting in and out might be difficult. Worse yet, you have a traffic accident, you have a sinkhole, you have a water leak causing a hole in the road. And one accident compounds another accident. They can happen at the same time, right? And a fire is raging, and the fire service appliances are having a hard time getting to the fire. Response times is not something that we're well known for here in TNT. But we'll see. Perhaps this is just a one-off, like I said, and as unfortunate as it is, and I hope for all the best for all those involved who have suffered great losses, right? Wish them all the best and hope that things can work out for everybody. But nationally, it might just be a one-off, and to some extent, let's hope it is. Because I don't know if I want to see our response to fires tested. It seems as though the firefighters responded reasonably well. I'm not entirely sure if their response time was sufficient, but the response level seemed to be decent, but equipment was lacking. Will this just be another story in that ongoing narrative that started off quite some time ago? We don't necessarily see a resolution in sight. Next story. This one is interesting. The quick response, or one could say concession to public sentiment, which did not all necessarily disagree with the decision for Trinity to enforce the dress code at its graduation ceremony and remove students or place them off to the side, one could say, from said ceremony. That was somewhat of a controversial topic. Every caller that called in actually agreed with enforcement of rules, which, when you get more of the backstory, it seems as though it was a long-term problem of not being able to get the students to comply. They couldn't suspend the students because the ministry said you can't block them from taking classes. So to me, now it's a breakdown of the disciplinary system. I don't know about kicking them out of graduation, but it is what it is. But I guess the ministry has decided, look, let's get to the actual issue, the cause of it. And so I don't think these are necessarily set just yet. You could check the details in the morning newspaper. It's not just limited to male students. There's also some consideration given to female students. So of course, hair still needs to be neat and clean. That's fine. Yeah, there's very few workplaces that will afford you to have untidy hair. But it seems as though, and of course there's safety considerations for having long hair tied back, but locks, twists, plaits, afros, cornrows, apparently is now going to be allowed. Hair extensions for female students. I mean, I guess, you know, how many men are going to look to admit they wear hair extensions? I don't know if they do. Wigs and colored hair are not allowed, or at least still not allowed. However, they might be allowed for exceptional cases. I assume that's for health reasons. And they have a couple of other stipulations, I guess you could say. They also have eyebrow markings and eyelash extensions, which is interesting, but I guess if you're going to address it, address as much as you can, try and figure out as much as you can. I actually applaud the ministry of taking it to this extent, because, yeah, it should be an active decision. And I feel as though before it was one of those things where, you know, well, the rules are fine and we just assume that they're fine and we allow them to continue. Despite the fact that it has been brought up time and again, you know, since I was in school, which would be a little over 20 years ago. And I can't speak to before that. But I am happy that the ministry took this response. I guess now it's to see exactly what the final implementation is going to be. It seems as though some of the denominational boards are not entirely happy seeing the proposals, and I guess it comes down to precedent has a very weird thing. And this also goes into the other scenario with the book, where, you know, you can see it a little bit and then it's easy for the debate to now move further and to push for even further concessions. And I understand that scenario, but I don't think that's quite enough of a consideration in this case. I believe the hairstyle policy needed to change. And then finally, last topic, just briefly mention this, water availability, because firefighting and water availability is a thing. Now, I don't know if you noticed, but those of us living in the north have been without water apparently since Tuesday. I don't necessarily keep track of the specific days because I'm accustomed to having low water pressure just as a matter of course. We have water, but the water pressure is generally low all the time. So in my household, the pumps have to run more or less almost all the time to keep the water pressure up in our pipes. And they're refilled over the course of the night and when we're not using water during parts of the day, etc., etc. What's interesting is, so it's all over the north from Port of Spain to San Juan, St. Joseph, Curep, etc. I got 3 to 4 text messages yesterday. And it's making me wonder if it took WASA 2 days to figure out that their initial plans just were not tenable. And on a practical aspect, technical experts, I don't know if they should have taken so long to figure out one pipe. You know, apparently they had to do fabrication to deal with the repair. Okay, I get it. And yes, some allowances for not knowing. But we're talking like a sixth of the country without a water supply and not being warned about it so that we could have taken our own measures to, if necessary, tighten our own water reserves or water usage, because I'm not entirely sure if an end is in sight to these repairs. Hopefully it will be done before the end of the weekend, I guess. I haven't seen if and when they said what ETA is. Okay, the rupture was Wednesday. So, I don't know. Water, like electricity, is not something that you can just kind of do on the fly. I don't think so. Right? And I would like to have more confidence that our capacity to engineer repairs would be a little bit more thorough in its planning. But I'm out of time. Let's take a break. When we come back, our usual good lady of Wednesday's Talking Point will be joining me this Friday to speak about matters in Tobago. Her final opinion. We still haven't gotten Keaton's opinion on that. See? But we'll get Karen's final thoughts on this matter. Stay tuned.
The issue, the continued rise in the price of flour and its impact on the cost of living in Trinidad and Tobago. How should we go about it? I want to ask you what has been revealed to you about the state of vulnerability in the country because of this exercise and because of what we're going through. Is the government losing the war on the vaccine front?
The discussion should revolve around the common good for the greatest number of people in Trinidad and Tobago.
How do we inculcate a sense of respect and regard for people who may not be of your own political ilk or persuasion?
The communities are now being used by political opportunists. So
when the tables are turned, it's the same way. Okay, this has been 10 Questions. I'm Andy Johnson, and we'll see you next time.
The best for your baby is at thebesttoys.com. From the best strollers, car seats, baby carriers, high chairs, booster seats, rockers, jumpers and bouncers, walkers, baby blankets, feeding accessories, bathtubs. Visit us in-store at Forces Flagship McLean. Shop online now at thebesttoys.com. Order via call or WhatsApp at 332-BABY. And remember, we have the best toys at the best prices.
FanZone, your reliable, authentic supplier, has just gotten better. You can now visit our website www.fanzonett.com for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. Visit our website fanzonett.com to make your purchase today.
Join me, Sule A. Joseph, as I delve into the day-to-day psychological issues plaguing our society. We will discuss behaviors that encompass the biological influences, social pressures, and environmental factors that affect how you think, act, and feel. Sight, Thursdays at 11:30 a.m., only on WESN, Content Capital.
Join me, Dr. Nalini Kokram, on What's Up Doc, where we discuss all your burning questions concerning health.
Trinidad and Tobago is among one of the highest risk group of patients that develop this form of genetic breast cancer.
What I'd like to take home from a short interview like this, screening. You must screen.
Because it's silent.
It's silent.
Yeah.
And because it's silent, you don't know it's there.
What's Up, Doc? Every Tuesday and Thursday on WESN, Content Capital.
I am Rondell Donowa, attorney at law and host of Strictly Legal on WESN Content Capital. Strictly Legal is a legal program geared towards informing you, the public, of your legal rights, responsibilities, and remedies. So be viewing Thursdays 10 a.m. to 10:30 a.m.
Is it politics? What is it? Is it that nobody cares about sports?
The kind of support that sport used to get in the past is no longer here.
The thing is, taking a knee doesn't mean that that's the only thing you're doing on it.
Right.
Taking a knee along with other stuff.
Samantha, what are you looking forward to when you return home to Trinidad and Tobago after winning the title?
Thank you very much for speaking it into existence.
Is it no pressure on Nicholas Paul?
It makes me more motivated to work hard and to go out there and rep the red, white, and black.
Why are we sending a team to the Winter Olympics?
There are a number of Trinbagonians who are in the diaspora and have grown up in winter sport. It's an opportunity that the Trinidad and Tobago Olympic Committee will not close the door on.
I also believe in the players that we have. Once you can motivate the players, you can get the best out of them.
As Kevin Hart would say, damn! Why we have so much minors out on the streets? There's an after-school program happening there.
Side women, don't give up. You know, you can become queen one day.
Those companies who are currently looking for their money that they deposited in the Silicon Valley Bank, it's not there. ChatGPT is basically the start of Terminator. Our relationship with the colonial powers is like a relationship with a little bit of abuse that people like to stay in. And we remember how that was. Put in $100 and later tonight, you'll get back $3,000. I promise you. I promise you not. Did you rent an accent while you were across there?
When you're in the proximity of Donald Trump, somehow you adopt his aura.
First of all, I thought the $200 would be more than enough. It's $200.
I's a goat farmer. I had 3 goats. Yeah, 3 goats and 1 cow. You know the name?
No, I don't.
Right, Messi, LeBron, and Cristiano Ronaldo. And the cow name Haaland.
I love Trinidad and Tobago, you know.
Welcome back to Talking Point, ladies and gentlemen. And you might say, you know, Sean, why you all like to talk about the same thing over and over? And that's because most of the things we talk about on Talking Point actually don't come to a solution, much to my frustration. And this is one of those topics that is maybe to some extent I take it personally too frustrating, but to have this conversation with me, we welcome the good lady of Talking Point herself, all the way from Mississippi. That is commitment, folks. Karen Nunes Teixeira, former Minister of Finance and attorney at law. Morning, Karen.
Good morning to you, Sean. Good morning to your listeners. And yes, actually they're 1 hour behind Trinidad. So it was a little bit of a challenge for me, and obviously Wednesday I couldn't do it, and I do cherish my commitment to WESN, and I think this week should be really the closing off of the discussion of Tobago's budget, and I didn't want not to have an opportunity to contribute to that discussion, though we had to wait, and I couldn't do it before today, but I'm happy to be here.
So you've had a chance now to speak with more people, gather more information. Have your views been swayed by all of the new information you might have garnered within the last week since we last spoke?
Right. Now, I will just say first, you know, and that is a general statement, because I think sometimes, and this is both for the national as well as THA budget, which comes out in June of every year. And our national budget is in usually September. But what a budget does, and it was well put by the Chief Secretary, Farley Augustine, it really is an expression of a nation's political and its policy aspirations. That's really what it is. You know, it's not just a conglomeration of figures and allocation of funds. If it really is a budget, it is a critical document because it really speaks to how the government sees itself and sees the future for that particular country. And in our case, the Tobago House of Assembly. So I'm not quite sure what has been covered in the other persons that have spoken on the show, but what I do know is, and I'm sure it's been said many times, but you know, if you watch the, by way of example, if you watch the international stations, the opinion stations, you know that they do stay on a topic, probably sometimes to an exhaustive level. So there's no question that we should do the same thing here, because you need, if something's important enough, you need to get different perspectives on a topic. So having said that, yes, you're right. Having spoken specifically, I know you've had him on, Dr. Vannis James. I had him on another show that I do, and it was really very helpful in my understanding of his own position. So I want to start by saying what he has said is accurate in the sense that the gross domestic product, which is the all the goods and services that are produced by Jamaica and by Tobago, really comes from the government, really comes from the state. You have last 21, 22, it was 48%, and this time it was 45%. So even though the GDP had dropped from 1.68 billion to 1.65 billion, that in a way to me is an improvement. What is more an improvement is in tourism. We saw last year it was 10% of the GDP, and this year we saw it as 14%. And I think one of the things that we do need to celebrate is renewal of the flights of Condor, because a lot of the tourists that go to Tobago are really from Europe, the Swedes, the Germans, etc. So the resumption of those flights to Tobago is something of note that they were able to achieve. Having said so, not wanting, I don't know what other persons have said on this show, but there are two things that have stood out to me in particular that I think, having had a look at last year's budget, this year's budget, it is true that when you present a budget, you are, in order to get funding for the next year, because that's how governments work. And you remember, I think it was Mr. Pandey, when he was Prime Minister, had to prorogue Parliament because he didn't have enough support, or he didn't believe he had enough support from his own people to pass a budget. And if you can't pass a budget by end of October, you can't spend money. So you cannot underestimate the importance of a budget running a country and for a country achieving its objectives. So it is a valid point that the GDP of last year was 1.68 billion, but then where's it coming from? You know, when you break it down, most of that GDP and most of the employment in Tobago is by the government. And this year it was 1.65. So that's been a big criticism of what Farley Augustine presented. But it's also your opportunity to account to the people for all the things that you said you projected to do, things that you did achieve, and things that you are in the process of achieving, and the things that have not been achieved. And I think that's one of the major criticisms, and I think it's a valid criticism, because you are accounting to the people. You started off with very high hopes. You headed up the name of the budget in a way in which I think the first pull at it, I'm not remembering it right off the top of my head, but certainly the second one was building sustainable prosperity and resilient Tobago. So the thing about it is, when you present the budget, it is your responsibility to then account to the people for all the projects that you said that you had in place to develop the country and the status of those projects, and that was not done. And that was not done, and one of the things that Dr. Vanus James had pointed out to me, so I'm just going to share it with the national community. He said that information was available to the chief secretary because it was available to him and other persons. So it wasn't as though he did not have the information, but obviously it did not reflect well on their lack of achievement and their failure to account to the people for why all these lofty ambitions you had for the country, you did not deliver on that, and that's not a good thing. I think also too why I'm going to particularly mention Dr. Vanus James, which I know you've had on the show, but having spoken to him at length, I expect he may have said it too. He was very much an advisor to the government in terms of when I think of THA, in terms of the approach they wouldn't take. After 21 years of a PNM THA, I think to turn it around to 14-1, you can't underestimate the importance of the advice that they were given. So I want to turn really to the two things that I would want to really speak to. And I think, well, one of them I've already said, and I think that is a fair criticism, that there was no really reporting of all these things that you said you were going to do for the country and to take it to another level, which you did not deliver. And you spent a lot of time, understandably, on the Dispute Resolution Commission that you really never got how much you were entitled to. Okay, so we dealt with that. But the key thing of all of it, which is a continuing recurring decimal, it didn't start this year, it's going on for 21 years. I mean, Tobago's a ward of the state. Yeah, Tobago's like, certain parts of Trinidad and Tobago, let's not call the names, but you keep them on CPEP and URP, and you keep them feeding from the trough because you want them to vote for you, because if they don't vote for you, they will lose those positions. And for 21 years, we had a PNM-led THA. And one of the things I will say is this, and that's the politician in me. The politician in me will say to you, all fine and dandy to want to do all these things, but any day we've got to win back Tobago. We lost by 14-1. So we have to win back Tobago. So what they are doing is continuing the trend of putting Tobago in a position where it simply cannot develop. It does not have all the funding that they get from central government goes into salaries of the THA. They employ so many people, and by the way, they separate the THA's employment to URP and CPEP, which have increased by I think 100% or increases, and so that there is the continuation of dependency, which has to come from central government, so that they are able to have the control, in my respectful opinion, over Tobago, as they do over many people in this country who find themselves in that position, because if they don't vote for the party, they will not get the CPEP award contract, they will not get the URP thing. I know that I was in government, I was IMP, so I know how I am not speaking in vacuum. And to me, I think the continuation of that policy for 21 years by the government has been deliberate, and it has been to ensure that there is no real development. You could say, well, why didn't some Tobagonians go out on their own and do something about it? Well, it wasn't encouraged, and I won't go into that too much. So I think that's one of the major things that they are what I call a ward of the state. They're a ward of the state. So coming back to Vanus, Dr. Vanus James' contribution, he didn't seem, at least at the time when I spoke to him, he didn't seem to be so concerned that the budget, they were under budget, they were not given a proper budget, that there was no money for development, and it would always be the case. That has always been the case, and that's how they like it. He seemed of the view that when he supported Farley and Watson Duke, that one of the commitments they made was to move for autonomy. And when I asked him to define it, he said to me, when I say autonomy, participatory government, in other words, not this top-down approach, but that the people must have a say in the direction of Tobago. And they came with a plan, so I thought it was sort of like airy-fairy. I mean, are you being realistic? He said no, they had set up 5 committees, none of which would be headed by politicians, to let people speak what they felt, and that the report would be put together and it would be sent to the chief secretary, who would then roll it out in Parliament. Not what he wanted to change, but what the people had said. And I think that's something that he felt very strongly about, and I think it's a good point. And the other thing he was very, very strong on, and, you know, Tobago is the autonomy. And when I asked him, you know, what do you mean by autonomy? Everybody throws that word around, and what does it really mean? He said, what it really means is to give us the power to make our own laws, to make our own direction. Everything has to come from central government. If you want to get a loan, if you want to get anything, central government has to give approval. When are we going to be allowed to do that? He told me that in the 1990s that they were going to set up a development bank. And that was promised and it did not materialize. He says, what is to stop us from having our own development bank? That not only Tobagonians are involved, but people from the other CARICOM countries. So that's to give you too much independence. That's to make you really feel that you have the right to self-determination. He also spoke, we have on the show many times, not drawing the marine lines. And apparently he worked with UNCLOS, which is the international body, as a senior advisor on the law of the sea. So he's not speaking out of his hat. Mm-hmm. And he said, not drawing those lines, those marine lines, only internal lines. And now he says he has no problem with Shell developing the waters of north of Tobago. No problem with that. I mean, if it inures to the benefit of Trinidad and Tobago. But what they need to do is start drawing lines and make us understand that there are border lines that define both countries. And I thought, and also the power to make laws, laws. And I thought of one of the things he did not stress, but this whole confuffle, as I'm talking a Trumpian expression, about the chief administrator. I think the Prime Minister, I don't think there's any question that the Public Service Commission did the first run through of the designated persons that they had wanted to designate. Then it would be at that point that the Prime Minister and the Chief Secretary would then talk and determine whether that was a good choice. The difference between the Chief Secretary and the Prime Minister is the Prime Minister has the power effectively of veto, and the Chief Secretary does not have that. So you are having laws and decisions about a critical position as the Chief Administrator. Even if it comes in, you come in at the end, the Prime Minister. The Chief Secretary does not have the powers that the Prime Minister has to say he's vetoing that decision, right? So at the end of the day, I think the things that I have taken out from the Tobago budget is that when they talk about autonomy, he was very careful about that, you know. Very careful not to say that we wanted to break away from Trinidad. He's very careful about that, I have to say. Very, very muted and nuanced about that. But he clearly sees that Tobago needs to have its own development, its own lawmaking powers, and allow it to look for financing and funding outside of the 300-400 million that you could never allow for development. And that's going on for 21 years and keeping Tobago effectively as a ward of the state.
Well, well, I'll just have to ask you to stick a pin right there, and hopefully we could continue right where you left off, because we have to take a break. So we'll continue the discussion. I have a few things to weigh, and I've been keeping track of everything that you've made, because some of these points are even more far-reaching than a single budget. But we'll get into that after this here on Talking Point.
The best laptops and tablets are at dbesttoys.com. Get a Gateway 14.1-inch Ultra Slim notebook or an HP 14-inch laptop at the best prices in TNT. Get the Fire 7 tablet for $474. You can also shop the latest Amazon Fire Sticks. Call now at 32-DBEST to order or visit us in-store at Forces flagship Mac Bean. Shop online now at dbesttoys.com. Free delivery available throughout Trinidad and Tobago. Cash or links on delivery.
Every word, every line, every paragraph depicts a real moment in someone's life. A father, a sister, a mother, a brother. We at Newsday are dedicated to you, the people, and through independent, unwavering journalism, strive to always bring your stories to life. Because your stories are more than just words. Newsday, independent and credible.
FanZone, your reliable, authentic supplier, has just gotten better. You can now visit our website www.fanzonett.com for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. Visit our website fanzonett.com to make your purchase today.
According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, heart disease claims a life every 34 seconds. Our relative sitting down across the table is experiencing a heart attack as we speak.
It is important to seek medical attention urgently because prompt treatment of a heart attack could prevent extensive damage and death. Therefore, one should try to get to a hospital as soon as possible, preferably by ambulance.
What's Up, Doc? Every Tuesday and Thursday on WESN, Content Capital.
On the next episode of Nicole Larson Live, Living in Victory every day.
They have this burning desire to ask the question and they're just not asking it.
My youngest daughter had an incident, not really an incident, but a concern at school one time where she said, "Mommy, I don't want you to pick me up anymore." And I said, "Why?" She's like, "Because the kids keep asking me, what happened to your mommy's skin? And every day I go to school, they're like, what happened to your mommy's skin?" And I went to the car and I cried.
What studies have shown is that in general, stress, and that is metabolic as well as physiological stress on the body, can lead to the onset and worsening of autoimmune disorders.
I know how cruel the world could be when they see me. Would I be deemed worthy? Would they allow me into the spaces that I wanted to be?
It's harder when no one is clapping, but clap a little louder for yourself during those times. Anything is possible if you have the mindset and the desire to do it.
An encore of Nicole Larson Live, Living in Victory every day. Every Sunday at 8 p.m. and Wednesday at 4:30 p.m. on WESN.
Welcome back to Talking Point, ladies and gentlemen. And Karen and I were discussing, this is more or less her summary of her final thoughts on the position that Tobago finds itself in. It's a very unfortunate one after just kicking out the long-term party that held power for 21 years. You're now potentially regretting the choice that replaced them and left with not much alternative in sight. And this is expressed with regards to criticisms that some people have made, including myself, over how different scenarios have been handled, including most recently the THA budget presentation and the budget itself. So Karen, I don't know if you quite remember where you left off or if we wanted to move on to, well, that wider point of where do
But right, so the reality is it's both connected, because that's exactly what I did ask him myself. But well, you know, and you have to know the backdrop to it was almost like self-inflicted wounds, But I think the media played a substantial part in it, and I think Watson Juve, it's just so much immaturity, lack of political experience. You don't air your dirty linen in public. Well, how is it going to help you? You're turning off people, and then you're giving the media a field day. So the first thing was the Roxville performing thing. I mean, why did he do that? Why did Watson Juve take that position, and then he had to come and explain that the teacher never sent them. In fact, anyway, I don't want to release that point, right? But then came after that, which I thought was very unfair actually, and the way the media covered it was very unfair in my view. The fact that his wife got a speeding ticket. What is wrong with someone who got a speeding ticket saying, "Listen, I'm asked, is it all right if I ask my son to bring my permit so I can show that I do have a valid permit"? What's wrong with that? I don't understand what was the thing. It obviously was something between the Trinidad people and the Trinidad. It was not about, I don't think it was about Farley and his wife. What's wrong with him coming at the end of the day and producing the permit? People do that every day. What was the big deal? And trying in some way to twist it in a way that I found so unacceptable. The third point was, I think that how Farley dealt with the being caught on
the
tape. I think his delay of three weeks or more was very, 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 very. Whoever advised it was very bad advice, because it appeared, at least to me, that they sat down there around a round table to decide, well, first, can we deny it? No, we can't deny it. So how do we best handle it? So it became so contrived and so lacking in being genuine. It did not help his cause. However, what I have found very telling, and other people have said that, why are you only talking about Farley? What brought about that whole situation? Why are you rushing to send the police to investigate the tape? Why are you doing that? Why you don't find out what caused the whole thing? He said he was being extorted. He said there were 2 senior ministers in government in Trinidad who were behind it. He said that the money, that amounts of bribery and corruption, that amounts of white-collar crime. Why is the media not interested in that? It's all about the tape and Farley. Okay, he admitted he did something, and when you read it, he didn't follow through, but he looked like he was going to follow through. But why aren't you talking about the person who then decided, you're not giving me the money, according to him? If you're not giving him money, well, I'm going to release the tape. Why aren't we talking about that? Why not we talking about who it is in central government that use their power to put pressure on Farley to do something about paying this particular contractor? Why are we not talking about that? I mean, the media really has to take a lot of responsibility on that, Go after Farley, yes, but go after that story, but you're ignoring that story. You're ignoring that story. So that completely turns me off. But answer, at the end of the day, what are the options available to be, which is what I asked Vanas, Dr. James. I said, but you're talking, you can't support Watson. You say you cannot support Farley, because Farley, I think what most offended him was the fact that they had agreed to this model of participatory government, and that he did not follow through that, and the whole issue of the autonomy and lawmaking powers. I think that.
Let me interject here, because there were times when the Chief Secretary would make comments, and he would, I can't remember the exact term that he would use, but he would basically make comments that implied he was speaking about, elder technical experts or political scientists, economists, that group of people, right? And basically criticizing them for their want to have input with regards to how the direction of the teacher was going, or their want to share their opinion. And it felt as though, to some extent, it was targeted to people like Varnish James, who was a heavy supporter, who had wanted to see certain things put in place. And this was the Chief Secretary's public pushback of, well, you know, all of a sudden they think they know, but we are the ones elected and we have to make the decisions. And to some extent, I could kind of understand why the chief sec said that, but you're basically criticizing the people that supported you when you were campaigning to be elected.
Well, I would now go to say it's more than that. If he's on Movanus, James, I mean, there's no question in my mind, that the role of, as an influencer, Tobago has a population of 60,000 people, and he has a brother, Winford James. There's no question in my mind that both of them are great influencers on the people of Tobago. So if you want to talk about this economist, and if what Dr. James represented to me was in fact what was agreed to, then he's being less than forthcoming, and he looks as though the power is gone to his head, which is a very, very bad thing for a young man like him. Because the reason why people chose him was not because they were afraid of Watson Duke, to be honest, but they felt that although he was young, he was mature, level-headed, and, you know, someone who they felt could hold the reins. And how he is reacting is not what Dr. James said, and I have no reason to disbelieve him. I believe that they sat down with Watson Duke, the committee, but I think he would have been a main player as to how they were going to go forward to Tobago. And a main component of whatever the support that he was able to get from the people and the support that he gave to the PDP was premised on two things: the autonomy, the lawmaking powers, so that they can start having their own ability to, without central government having a say, and participation. And when he told me that, I kind of challenged him on that, because I said, you know, you're saying that, and there are negatives about that, because what happens with that, if you go down that line, that can act as it can hold back progress, because if you have to wait for what they say, what the committee says, and what the committee says, I mean, it's not a way why you had state enterprise. So I see the negatives in that, but he is an influencer. So I said to him, I said, okay, when you went with the 1990s and you came back to Tobago and you were pushing this effectively health tourism, and you had actually partnered with Johns Hopkins and some of the top hospitals in the United States and the top doctors to partner with Tobago, I said, did you do that type of investigation, or did you, communicate with the national community? He said, we went to every single village, from Charleville, Palotier, every single village, and we heard what they had to say. So he put in his mouth where his money is. He not talking, he talk, he walking, he walk. And if Farley Augustine continues to take that approach, he has taken on a formidable opponent. And to answer the question of, well, what are the options? Well, from what he said to me, and I suspect it's almost in the works, I don't know, I am maybe speaking out of turn, he said, well, we definitely can't go back to the PNM. That's why we did what we had to do. We can't go back to those 21 years of that.
Yeah.
He said, however, it's clear that Farley is not the right person to be the chief secretary. We are even within the administration that we feel a better place for that. And so it's not a question of abandoning the thing. It is replacing who is the chief secretary with someone else. Now, will Farley go quietly into the night? Will Farley quietly give up the vote? It doesn't seem so, and it is shown by the nasty comments that he's making. I mean, it is so. Don't do that yourself, Farley Augustine. You came in on a particular role that people saw that you had, and now you're taking yourself, and it seems to the onlooker, it may not be so, but it seems the onlooker like power's gone to your head, and you also, you know what happens to a lot of politicians.
Yes.
Having been there in that thing, what they tend to do is they tend to surround themselves with the yes men. So they block out, because he has not met with them, apparently. He said he has not met with them. That's Farley. What they do is surround themselves with the yes men who reinforce, or who really say, don't worry with them. We have it going. We know what we're doing. And for him to go into the public domain and to be making those kind of statements, when that same Vanessa James and Winfred James and all these intellectuals and influencers in your country and coming out and behaving in the manner you behaving, I'm not going to be surprised. A day in politics is a lifetime. So he better watch what he says, and he better watch his public utterances. And sometimes it's better to allow others to say and to take the high ground and say, well, that's an opinion that he may have. We don't share it, but he's entitled to his opinion. Deal with it that way. But you're going down talking about these old economists and what they say. Yeah, well, them old economists have you where you are. Okay? Just remember that.
Well, we have to take a break for news on the hour, but I would just like to point out one more argument for Dr. Vanessa James is that look at what he is complaining about the promises. Dr. James was not made any financial promises or any sort of personal remuneration or reward promises. Dr. James is complaining about, look, we were promised certain actions for either the government of Tobago or how the public would be able to have their voices heard within the government of Tobago. None of that has anything to do with Dr. Vanessa James personally profiting. And with regards to the Chief Secretary, yes, it is interesting to me how a career that was so promising and so filled with hope that it could have been a change with regards to the landscape of national politics has now potentially ended up being a disappointment. I'm not writing him off just yet, but
he's going down that road, you know.
He's going down that, yes, you are correct. He's
and you know
going
something
down that
I will
road.
just say is very quickly shown. He's going on that road, and to me, you know the emperor with no clothes on?
Yes,
I really think that he doesn't understand impact of what he's saying, you know. But the public are judging. Public are judging. He better calm down his language, his how he expresses himself, and go about it in a way that people feel the maturity, which he's not mature in handling political pressure.
And just to be fair, yes, I know there's a story that's involving the Prime Minister. He should tone down his language as well. Yeah. That's something that we've been saying from the start of the show. There are a lot of politicians who need to tone down their language or get out. But folks, we have to take a break for news on the hour. When we return, we'll open up the phone lines. Last chance for the week to let your voices be heard. We have a few things in the daily review and of course the Tobago issue and other things unsaid today, but you could bring them up when we have our call-in segment after the news break. Stay tuned.
Here is the WESN News on the Hour. I am Sira Ali. Thanks for joining us. Here are the headlines. Health Ministry received 5,760 doses of the Pfizer vaccines. Dan Steel manufacturing building went up in smoke. TTPS retrieved vehicle stolen in La Hoqueta. And internationally, Canadian farmer fined for using thumbs up emoji. Now for the details. 5,760 doses of the Pfizer COVID-19 vaccines were received today by the Ministry of Health. This was as a result of a donation from the government of Greece facilitated through the COVAX facility. The ministry advised that the vaccines are suitable for individuals 12 years and older. The ministry encouraged those who have not yet been vaccinated or boosted to visit a health center. The vaccines will become available on July 9th. Employees of Dan Steel had to be evacuated after a fire started at the company's La Romaine San Fernando compound on Thursday morning. Fire officers were on the site working to contain the blaze, which is said to have started around 10 a.m. on the eastern side of the building complex, where welding work was being done. Propane, a highly flammable gas, was being used. Approximately 100 people are employed at that business. Quick work by officers of the Northern Division Task Force has resulted in the arrest of 3 men when police intercepted a vehicle minutes after it was stolen on Wednesday. According to police reports, at around 8 p.m. last evening, officers acting on the information went to a home at Jai Ramkisoon housing in La Hogata, where upon arrival, officers found 3 suspects in a black Toyota Fielder. The officers announced their presence and conducted a search of the vehicle and suspects, which led officers to the discovery of $17,000 in a blue bag. None of the occupants of the vehicle were its owner nor had permission to use the same. Further investigations revealed that the suspects had just broken into a Kia K2700 motor vehicle, which was parked outside the home. It was also discovered that the sum of cash was taken from the Kia K2700. The officers quickly informed the homeowner, who informed them that the owner of the vehicle is a resident who resides 2 blocks away. Both homeowners, before the arrest, was unaware that they were in fact victims of the crimes. The suspects and the items were retrieved and taken to the La Hogata police station for processing. The men are currently assisting officers with the inquiries. Citizens are reminded to exercise extreme caution when parking vehicles and securing valuables, as there is an uptake of larceny motor vehicle cases across the country. The exercise was conducted by Corporal Fortune and a party of officers of the La Hogata Police Station and the Northern Division Task Force Area South. Investigations are continuing. Internationally, you may want to rethink the next thumbs up emoji you send, as it could be interpreted as a digital signature. A farmer in Canada was fined a hefty sum for using the emoji after he was sent a contract by text message. Chris Archer argued it was to acknowledge receipt, but a judge ruled it amounted to a contractual agreement. He must now pay $82,000 Canadian currency for failing to fulfill the contract. Well, that's news to the hour on WESN. I am Sarah Ali. Thanks for watching.
The continued rise in the price of flour and its impact on the cost of living in Trinidad and Tobago. How should we go about it? I want to ask you, what has been revealed to you about the state of vulnerability in the country because of this exercise and because of what we're going through? Is the government losing the war on the vaccine front?
The discussion should revolve around the common good for the greatest number of people in Trinidad and Tobago.
How do we inculcate a sense of respect and regard for people who may not be of your own political ilk or persuasion?
The communities are now being used by political opportunists. So
when the tables are turned, it's the same way. Okay, this has been 10 Questions. I'm Andy Johnson, and we'll see you next time.
Welcome back to Talking Point. Of course, the discussions continue over a wide range of topics off air, some of which we could share, some of which we can't share. It's just the way how it is. But folks, now is the time where we do want to have discussions on air with you. We have 2 phone lines now, and hopefully there's no issues with them. The number should be coming up on your screen. And call in, let us know, what you think. I understand. It's unfortunate that the media does have a balancing act to play with regards to prioritizing stories and what some people might think is important, other people might not think is important. I do believe, however, that we try our best on Talking Point to give everything that's important as much consideration as possible. They have some stories that I feel we ourselves have forgotten about in the last couple of months. But call in, let us know what you think. I am curious with regards to Karen's thoughts on Tobago and to what extent central government is involved in this, whether directly or indirectly. But also, they have other things to speak about because, as mentioned by myself and also in our news on the hour just now, one of our established small to medium businesses suffered a significant loss yesterday. If you would like to speak about that, if you know with regards to what's going on with those workers, and if you're suffering from the water shortages from this week with regards to WASA's maintenance work and the unforeseen complications, call us in, let us know. Numbers up on your screen, 628-4578, 623-9376. The phone lines are open. I know this is, the beginning of July, so vacationing is vacationing. Look, even my compatriot there is vacationing. Karen. But as we wait for calls,
yeah,
I think
one of the things that I feel very strongly about, and it actually was in the electronic media, because I tend not to, I more read the print media, and the way in which the whole issue with regards to the conversation that was recorded and then released and used as a method, apparently as extortion to the public, I think it is not giving the weight that it should, and the spotlight is being put on Farley Augustine. And you can't even say, well, he's a politician, because what he is saying is that alleged extortion came from members of the government in Port of Spain, so it is political all around. Yet the print media seems to want to put all the focus on Farley Augustine, and having been in the trenches, so to speak, it seems to be, or appears to be, a deliberate effort to put the spotlight on him. What he did was not right. He thought about it, he did act on it, but it still was not right. Definitely was not right, and did not speak to who he represented himself to the people. I think that's more of the disappointment there, because I think people felt that he was a cut above all of that. So it was a level of disappointment that he would go down that road. But nonetheless, I think the bigger story is who is behind this extortion attempt? Who it is that released that thing that they had since March and waited till May to release it. That is what you call white collar crime. This is the crime that our country is being, we are, and it's acted out on the streets. This money laundering, this white collar, and the bribery, this extortion. This is where, as Trinidad, to a large extent, the position it is in. And to see the media, the print media, maybe that's more, but I don't think that's more sensational. I find what more sensational is who in heaven's name trying to make him pay a particular contractor who he's alleging has close ties with people in the political guile in Trinidad. It's a bigger story.
Well,
to my mind.
The irony is, could it be that in TNT we've reached the point where corruption is so expected, right? We're not surprised anymore. Look, we had the situation with ANV drilling. We had questions with regards to how Nikon got a share of natural gas when natural gas shortages were all around. And there was the whole Section 34 in the administration before. So is it that perhaps we as a people are so cynical to corruption that we don't really respond to it appropriately?
Well, I think we've gotten numbed by thing, but that is no excuse for you not to highlight, because it's the government, whoever that government is. And they're the ones that have the power of the purse. And they're the ones that have the ability to create policy, and those are the ones we look to as being the ones to be the keeper, not only of the purse, but all the things that go with good governance. So no, I can't agree with that at all. And don't forget the local government. That was a great embarrassment to them. I mean, when you had, yes, it was 3-2, and then you have the Attorney General coming out and counting numbers. I mean, where you reach as an attorney general to start counting numbers about who, when you do that, you make people feel we really must keep the Privy Council, because most of the numbers he had to refer to were numbers of our judges. Those were the numbers he was adding up like a SCA student, right? But what he has to work there is that the Privy Council is our final court of appeal, and they condemned what the government did. It said it was against the Democratic Republic, that you are going to, as I use this quote all the time because it struck me so much, it's terrible enough for the Parliament, much less the government, to try to change the law without going to Parliament. What about Earl Christopher? That matter has not yet been resolved. Did you not have, is there anything in the police, the legislation that would apply to the to the police at her level, because she will be covered by the Police Service Commission for both the deputy and for the Commissioner of Police? Did you not have to go to the Parliament to get the extension beyond the year? Could you, just as the government, do something like that? What gives you the power? What gives you the power to do things like that? So AV drilling, I mean, it just goes on and on and on. The people are so, you're saying, I think people are so, the numbness you see, in my respectful opinion, is a numbness that comes out of what are our choices, what are they. They almost feel as if, what can we do? And also there's a selfishness. There is a selfishness because I've had some experiences recently, and I guess because I will stop if anyone calls her because I'm just
yeah.
But
well, I'm now wondering if the phone lines are working, but go ahead, Karen.
Yeah, what struck me, and I suppose I have to factor into the equation that a lot of how I look at things will not be what is in it for you, but what is good for the country, But what disturbs me is that the same persons who will complain about what's going wrong in the country are the same persons who contribute to the very problems of this country. Because you know why? As long as they're getting what they want, whether it's a job, whether it's a consultancy, whatever it is, they keep quiet and they vote them back in, and yet they will sit down in a group and say, where are we going as a country? You have to take personal responsibility for it. And one of the things as I'm waiting on, if we get callers, but it was something that I had a guest on, and she kept talking about, with all due respect to her, highly respected, but, kept talking about migrants. I said, why you keep saying migrants? 9 out of 10 of the persons who are Venezuelans, why are you saying migrants to make it? You're trying to sugarcoat it. I say, come on, it's the Venezuelans. And, but I said, listen, even your Prime Minister said in the early days, when he said he would make them refugees, he said, Trinidad has limited land space. Why they don't go to America? Why they don't go to other Latin American countries where there's a space? But that's the only point I want to really make. They are not, and it just occurred to me when I was speaking with her, I said, they're not only non-CARICOM members, they're not only not English speaking, well, Haiti is some, but they're CARICOM, but go beyond that. I saw, and I do like Dr. Gonzalez, and I respect Dr. Gonzalez, but Dr. Gonzalez was talking about the Petro-Caribe. Now, the Petro-Caribe was an initiative from Venezuela to provide CARICOM countries with refined fuel at very preferential rates, both in how much they would have to pay back and the length they have to pay back. And that was having the effect of impacting on our CARICOM thing. This is a country that is not a member of CARICOM, is a Spanish speaking. And what they are doing is trying to divide CARICOM. Every country in the Eastern Caribbean signed up to the Petro-Caribe except Trinidad and Barbados. And you want to know what the final irony of Dr. Gonzalez, who I like and I respect very much, but you want to know what is the final irony? This is why people are selfish. talking the Petro-Caribe. He understood that the Petro-Caribe was detrimental to Trinidad and Tobago. He understood that now people were going to turn these Eastern Caribbean, these Caribbean islands were now going to turn their attention to supporting Tobago, Venezuela. So he started you remember that fund, that petrol fund, that fund, fuel fund? He started it, right. You know who was the first person that benefited, and he had to set it to counteract the Petro-Caribe. These people who are in our country who are not only not members of CARICOM, but trying to, by that way, to destroy the basis of the CARICOM. That's how he started that fund. I was there. I signed off for Dr. Gonzalez. The first $100 million that Dr. Gonzalez got to build his airport in St. Vincent came from that fund. He has a picture of the Prime Minister in the airport because Trinidad and Tobago gave him his first $100 million US to build his airport. Yet he's in an article talking Petro-Caribe. That is in our interest? No. Another thing that people do not realize, and I know it from seeing my father when I was growing up, and I knew it happened all the time. I used to live down deep south, and they'd go fishing on the weekends. You know what their greatest fear was? The Venezuelan pirates and the La Guardia Nacional. Yeah, they're our friends. They were the greatest thing. And my father was held up at least twice by those pirates, stolen his Rolex watch. And the last part of it, is, do you know that right now they're from the International Court of Justice because Venezuela is claiming nearly 2/3 of a CARICOM country called Guyana as if it is belonging to them, and we supporting them who bringing in the drugs into our country?
Well, actually, I want to take this opportunity because I almost forgot. I did mention when the word of the High Court ruling that basically said we don't have the domestic laws that precludes us from deporting refugees, right? We have signed in the 1951 UN Convention, but we don't necessarily formally have implemented it locally. I actually did think, well, this is a topic that you have been on top of from the very beginning of WSN's existence, and I wanted to potentially hear your take. Now the judge is saying, well, look, yes, refugees, but depending, we could still, subject to the laws of TNT, deport them because the fact the refugee status alone, as you pointed out, are we even going to consider them refugees or economic migrants? How are we going to sticking point?
And we don't. And the reason why, but I don't want you to underestimate when they talk about helping Venezuela. Venezuela has been an enemy to Trinidad. The Petro-Caribe was an enemy to Trinidad and Tobago. That's why the fuel fund got. And that same Dr. Gonzalez got the $100 million to start his airport.
We have a caller
when I was a student.
We have a caller Karen from San Fernando, yeah.
All right.
Good morning, Sean.
Morning.
Morning, Karen. Hold a second, Sean. Yes, you hear me?
I can hear you. Karen, you could call us?
Sean, you hear me?
Yes.
You all are off the air, I only just realized that you all have the live stream and I tuned into the live stream, but I didn't see most of the program because you all are not. I am on flow and it is frozen. There's a picture of Keaton on the screen and
right. Yes, I believe we have an issue with flow. I don't know exactly what it is. Obviously, but we believe it's on their end.
Yes, I needed to say that because you all, as I said, I didn't realize that I forgot about the live stream and only just tuned in about a couple minutes ago on the live stream.
Right.
So,
well, for what it's worth, as we always do, just so you and anybody else will know, the whole episode should be up on our social media platforms, Facebook and YouTube. And even if it's not streamed, we would post it up. So, there is that. Correct?
So what you're also saying is something outside of your control, which has been a recurring decimal since I started on this show. I've never heard, I do another show, but I never hear anybody talk about this flow issue. I mean, what is it? I mean, it's very disturbing.
Well, I mean, we've had issues, Karen, with Flow. We've had issues with TSCT. We've had issues to some extent with Digicel. So I don't know who's
want people to hear you all over.
Apparently, you know, we're too hot for the airwaves.
I think so. I really do think so, you know, because I think we are fair and objective. I mean, I don't know if Mr. San Fernando agrees, because I can recognize the voice, and he may not agree with everything I say. But what I did say about Petrocaribe is true. What I said about the fund, with the fuel fund, is true. And the first person who
the piracy
benefited.
The piracy is still
but Dr. Gonzalez in the papers talking about Petrocaribe and how America holding back things. The Petrocaribe was never in Trinidad and Tobago's interest. He's talking about something that for him, that's CARICOM, and not only the piracy, which I know my father has been held up when he was alive, at least twice by those pirates. But I want to say more than that, the last point on it. I don't mind if you regularize some of the Venezuelans who meet the criteria. I'm not saying no, but it is clearly a problem. And you know what's the other problem? When I was a student many moons ago, a person with whom I went to school who went in the political Guyana and who's well known, she eventually married a Guyanese who was a member of the army. And do you know what his job was? Senior person in the army, to guard the border between Venezuela and Guyana. Guyana is a CARICOM English-speaking country. Venezuela is not. And they have gone to the International Court of Justice and taken Venezuela to the International Court of Justice because there is an agreement called the Arbitral Award of 1899, which agreed on the boundaries.
Okay.
And they're not respecting it.
We have San Fernando back on the line. Caller, go ahead.
Yes, you know, Sean. I'm going to comment on that Petrocaribe, that CARICOM arrangement and these CARICOM countries. I am very suspect when I see all these people coming in, or even it was the 50th anniversary when I saw you have Anthony Blinken and you have the head of the United Nations. I am worried for CARICOM, and I say that seriously, because there is always, when you see these people come, there is always an agenda.
True.
There is always an agenda, and as I said, CARICOM is once again trying to move in the right direction. As Karen said, that issue with the Petrocaribe agreement, I think she should expand a little more on that, because I know a fact that Trinidad and Tobago, they had a fund that Trinidad and Tobago had contributed to, and which they were able to get funds from, and that was a stab in the back. That Petrocaribe agreement with Venezuela was a stab in the back to Trinidad and Tobago, you know. That was a stab in the back.
And they are supposed to be our friends. They're not our friends. I'm telling you, they are attacking Guyana, which is a CARICOM.
Karen, why don't you mention? You should mention. Remember when there's a village in St. Vincent called Manning Village.
Yes,
Mr. Manning provided money for them to build some houses.
Yes.
And we provided money for them to do that new Argyle airport. We helped them with that Argyle airport as well.
And
we don't understand the amount of stuff that people have contributed to, you know. Within CARICOM, you know, a lot we have contributed so much to CARICOM to keep it where it is.
Mr. Manning was very
committed. We don't get our just due. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I would also like to Venezuelans. I really had a
I would also like to slip in here that the fact that the irony is, Karen, as you pointed out, the caller and you has pointed out the situation in the past with Trinidad being sidelined with Petrocaribe. But Karen, you're also pointing out Guyana's issues. And I'm pretty sure CARICOM members, including St. Vincent and Grenadines, including its Prime Minister, Ralph Gonsalves, is now looking, okay, if TNT could help us with our energy needs, or if Guyana could help us with our energy needs. Because right now, part of the deals in CARICOM is with regards to trying to secure energy security for the smaller islands in CARICOM. And it will be the same people suffering through from some of these things with the proximity to Venezuela who are going to have to, who are at the forefront of trying to help CARICOM solve those problems.
I can't leave the show without reiterating, because there was a long interview with Dr. Gonzalez, who I like, who got his first 100 million US to start his airport from the fund that Mr. Manning set up. And he wanted to talk about petrocurry. His country signed up to take the oil, refined oil from Venezuela. So don't come and tell me about CARICOM. We helped you, and that is the thanks. Please. And they are not even a part of CARICOM, and they are fighting Guyana for nearly 2/3 of their country using there's an arbitral award, and I can't see that Guyana won't win. This is Venezuela trying to take, because of all the oil and gas that is in the marine waters off of nearly 2/3 of Guyana's land, and we are sitting on there and saying, oh, they're what you call them? They are not migrants, right? And let them go back to Colombia and Venezuela. And those who qualify, let them come in. But you are helping what effectively is, and was an enemy to our country. And up to now, they cannot get that deal with Dragon Field.
Okay,
up to now, they can't get it.
We have to close, but I would just like to end with two things. One, I think what Karen is saying there, that's a warning. And I think CARICOM needs to be ready to stand with Guyana. However, or whatever means that may end up being, we should be ready and willing to stand with Guyana. Because we're all now looking at the new kid on the block and how much it might help benefit the community.
Exactly.
But the community, of course, has to do its part too and stand with Guyana. Whatever means necessary so that Guyana's sovereignty is not infringed upon. And I will close by this. My heart does go out to those workers of Dan Steel. And I hope that for them and anybody else caught in that situation where you've lost your job from these, unpredictable circumstances in this economic climate.
With high inflation.
With high inflation. You took the words right out of my mouth. I hope that we as a society could do better, because by doing better, we will have more capacity and facility to treat with cases like these. And these are not the only cases of people in need, but we don't want to now just allow the problem to continue to grow and grow out of control without a capacity to do anything. So I hope my thoughts and prayers, goes out to those who might be now looking for a job come Monday morning. And I hope that nobody else in our nation has to suffer through what they are.
The unemployment rate is not valid, as I already explained.
Karen, those who watch this show and listen to you know that. So with that said, thank you, Karen. Thank you to our one caller for being able to call in. Yes, flow problems is big problems. But even still, this is a great time to make your weekend great, to make your day great, for your friends, for your family, and for yourselves. Do what you can. We will see you Monday morning. Goodbye.
WESN.
I'm Andre L. Batiste, and you're watching WESN, the content capital.
People really want to know, what about me? Where do I fit? Yes. What is in the ride for me in terms of a better Trinidad and Tobago? And I'm pleased to shed some light on that.
The purpose of bail is to ensure your attendance at court. That's it. It is not punitive. It is not rehabilitative.
We, the police officers, we are professional, and we are here for whenever the survivor is ready to come forward.
We have the right to private and family life, the right to religious freedoms and beliefs and thoughts and expression. But these rights are not absolute.